Ace is a place with the helpful hardware, folks.
I got my Christmas lights out. They're a huge, tangled, non-working mess.
I showed Dominic our LED light sets. They last longer than traditional lights, and they're on a reel, so they're easier to handle.
Ace is a place that knows nothing takes the joy out of Christmas like untangling lights that don't even light.
Visit your neighborhood Ace now and get $3 in instant savings on select reels of LED holiday lights. Ace Rewards members save instantly in-store. Offer valid through November 30th at participating stores. Store stock only. See store for details. Limit 4.
Hillary is the one who broke the law over and over and over again. We can be sure that what is in those emails is absolutely devastating. And I think we're going to find out, by the way, for the first time. Thank you, Uma. Thank you, Uma. Good job, Uma. Thank you, Anthony Weiner.
Back on 77 WABC. Even you're laughing.
Oh, it's because he's idiotic.
Even a Trump hater is laughing at
funny.
Donald Trump.
It's so desperate and silly, but it is funny.
Back on the Bernie and Sid show. Listen, on the line with us right now, we have a Fox News anchor, reporter, and she actually covers the Supreme Court, a great legal mind, Shannon Bream. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Shannon, I got two things for you before we get to the serious stuff. And again, Shannon also, she anchors a bunch of shows, News Headquarters and America's Election Headquarters. She's a big star. First of all, Game 6 tonight, Cubs-Indians World Series. And for people that don't know this, although they should, your brother-in-law involved one of the most famous plays in the history of the World Series.
He was, yeah, Sid Bream, not known as a speed demon.
Right.
But he rounded third and made it into home for the NLCS championship to win it for the Braves years ago.
Yep.
And it's a famous moment.
Famous moment, Sid Bream, Braves against the Pirates. I'll never forget that. So that's kind of cool if you get to watch a game with your brother-in-law. And second of all, you were born, because I also lived in South Florida for many years, you were born in the city, one of the most famous, I guess, murders in the country's history went down in the place you were born.
Yeah, we don't like to think of it that way, but I was born in
Really?
Sanford, Florida, just outside of Orlando. Yeah, it's been in the news a lot the last few years, but it's a beautiful place.
It is a nice place, but that, of course, is the place where the whole George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin thing went down. And I know driving up when I moved to New York back in June from Florida, and I drove past Sanford. And when I drive past that sign, Shannon, the first thing I think of is Trayvon Martin.
I know. I mean, it really is. It's what put that little town on the map. It's a growing city, but yeah, unfortunately, I think for a lot of people, that's their word association for it.
Shannon, so let's get to the politics right now. Florida native, Sid was a refugee from New York down in Florida. And he's back in New York now, and we're glad to have him. We're glad to have you, Shannon.
I was guessing he wasn't born in Florida.
No, you can tell, huh? You can tell. But I did
Very
spend
good.
15 years in Boca Raton, which is basically, Shannon, Long Island on steroids. Basically.
Exactly. It's Long Island South.
Right, exactly.
So, Shannon, James Comey, FBI director, he upset the whole election. He upset a lot of people as well. He reopened the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email use, and it was all due to the investigation into Anthony Weiner's sleazy, sordid activities. Now, here's the question. Hillary Clinton keeps saying, listen, release the stuff. But by law, she should know that you can't release information into an ongoing investigation while the investigation is ongoing. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, yeah. She and her team know that. But what else can she do at this point? It's so close to the election, and that sounds like the best probably way to tackle it, to say, I want to be transparent, let's put everything out there. But there's just no way. I mean, if you're going through 650,000 emails allegedly, and they're using search term and a special software program the FBI has put together, but even still, every email that you find that flags any kind of concern has to go through multiple agencies for decisions about classification. There's just no way it's
Never going to happen.
No, and that's why it's not going to happen before the election next Tuesday.
So she's being disingenuous when
of
she
course
calls
she is.
for it.
Right. But like Shannon said, what else is she supposed to do? But another legal thing here, yesterday we kept seeing that possibly Jim Comey violated the Hatch Act and maybe he did something illegal. That's not the case, but explain why.
Because most people think that that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it essentially has to do with public officials out campaigning or doing things that are related to an election. And the first response I saw, because Harry Reid, Senate Minority Leader, of course, is the one who first floated this idea, as far as I've seen. But then I immediately got a deluge of people who said, what about all the things that Harry Reid has done when he stood on the Senate floor, where there is some legal protection for certain statements that you make, but talked about word on the street is that Mitt Romney hasn't paid taxes when we know there was zero truth to that. There were no facts behind that. So public officials who are making decisions in line with their job duties, it would be a huge stretch for anyone to ever be able to legally argue that in some way Comey was campaigning or benefiting a specific employee or candidate by doing his job.
So Shannon Bream from Fox News on the Bernie and Sid show. Reuters and other people are reporting that there was some ugliness. There was an argument between James Comey, the FBI director, and Attorney General Loretta Lynch over whether or not he should go public with this investigation. And he actually said to them, according to some reports, he said to her, "Are you ordering me to not to do this?" And she said, "No, I'm not." Could she have ordered him not to do it? And if so, I mean, what could she have ordered him to?
Well, that's a big debate here, too, because people will argue about whether he works for her, whether he reports directly to the president, whether the FBI is, subservient to the DOJ and the Attorney General has the final say on things. I mean, there are people here in Washington who are split on that topic, absolutely, and, would argue that he has a lot of autonomy and could answer directly to the president. Skipping her in the process, we know he's made every effort, though, along the way to follow what most people see as the protocol and go through the Attorney General with these decisions. She obviously, after the word of the tarmac meeting between her and former President Bill Clinton leaked out, she then said she would defer to his judgment on the initial decision about whether or not to indict. But there are a lot of folks here in Washington who argue about whether he would ever really have to consult with her. Or whether he may be risking his job to leapfrog her.
She was sort of neutered by that. Bill Clinton discredited. He hurt her, Bill Clinton did, by ambushing her on the tarmac. Now she is sort of, her reputation is in shambles because of Bill Clinton. And so she lost some authority, I would posit, after that, which is why Comey figured he could do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, there are all kinds of, reports that she was incredibly uncomfortable when he approached the plane and came on board. And that it was something that she would never have initiated, but that it was something that he was sort of gregarious, and he's there, and you know how he is. He's very charming.
Sure.
And he, how do you stop and say, "Excuse me, Mr. Former President, don't come on the plane"? I mean, she could
not
have.
gonna
I would
happen.
imagine that would have been
right. It's not going to happen.
And he
So,
gave her
right,
her start.
I'm sure he did. He did, actually, and I'm sure he's going to give her her finish. Shannon Bream, Fox News anchor, here with Bernie and Sid. Talking about reputation in shambles, and Donald Trump supporters don't want to hear this today because today he's their hero. So is Jim Comey. That's the bottom line here, Shannon. And there are a lot of people on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, who really want to know what was his motivation here. He came out a couple of months ago. He had nothing. Now he comes out a couple of days before the election, knowing full well he's not going to release anything or tell us anything before the election. I know you're not in his head, but what do you think was Jim Comey's motivation here?
Well, we've heard a lot about that he felt extreme pressure and backlash because we've been hearing from FBI agents off the record for months before he ever stepped out in July and said, "We're not going to indict her." A number of them who said, "I will quit, I will go public if he does this." And apparently, the reports are that he had mounting a growing list, a pile of resignation letters on his desk, and was really trying to struggle with how morale had been absolutely decimated by his decision, by people who within the agency didn't think it was the right decision. Apparently, there was possibly some pressure from his wife as well. And at the end of the day, you have to think, if some of this stuff was going to break right after the election, how much worse for him that would look if Hillary Clinton was elected, and then 5 days later he says, "Oh, and we just found a cache of new emails on Anthony Weiner's laptop that may or may not be involved with her." I think that it was a calculation you have to make, and he must have decided in his mind, it is better for me to be upfront about this now that we have some concerns, rather than to let the election happen and then drop it.
That's fair, but does that mean, because obviously the Trump supporter goes to the next level, if he did this a week before the election, he must have stuff, Shannon Bream, that's going to stop the world from turning. And what I'm saying is, not necessarily. He's got a load of stuff, needs to be looked into, but to go to that stretch that he must have something really awful, I think is a little premature.
I agree with you. I think it's a stretch because at this point there's so much searching to do. All they know is they've had hits for emails that may end in state.gov, things that they have to look at and see whether they were classified, whether they were truly, problematic. They don't know yet, but I think in an abundance of caution, he felt like, I have to put this out now rather than looking like I saved it until after the election.
Shannon Bream from Fox News on the Bernie and Sid show. Listen, a lot of talk about if Hillary is elected, she's under investigation. If she's elected, we could face a constitutional crisis. Do you think, at this point she should pledge not to pardon herself, or maybe Obama should pledge that he won't pardon her before the election? Or is this fear of a constitutional crisis valid?
I do think it is a question that you have to look into, because I interviewed the House Judiciary Committee Chair, Bob Goodlatte, a couple of days ago and asked him about this. What happens if she's sworn in with all of these pending investigations with congressional committees, with the FBI, with whatever agency we don't know about? I said, are you actually going to subpoena a sitting president to come testify on Capitol Hill under oath? And he said, yes, we don't intend to abandon these regardless of who is elected. We started these investigations and we want to get answers. So it would create a very unusual and for many people uncomfortable situation. But it's very realistic to consider that these things aren't going away whether she's elected or not. And you have to look ahead. We sort of joked last week that it was actually a good week for Tim Kaine, because if she wins,
right, he's the president.
He's going to stay prepared and be ready to step in if he needs to.
Well, let's talk about the election. Shannon Bream, not just a great legal mind, but the host of Election Headquarters. You follow this thing very, very closely. Did Donald Trump get what he needed on Friday to put him over the top? I don't think so. I still think she wins. I think it's a little closer, but I think she wins comfortably. What do you think happens next Tuesday?
I think when you look at the Electoral College, it's still a very tough uphill battle for Trump to win. It's not impossible, and it's probably gotten a little bit more impossible the last few days. But when you look state by state and getting to that magic number of 270,
he ain't getting there.
It's really difficult.
Yeah, he ain't getting there.
I mean, it's tough, because not only does he have to take every state that is solidly GOP, leaning GOP, he's got to get every single toss-up, and he has to pick off one of the major leaning Democrat states.
Well, you have, Shannon, the Obamacare shock. It's a devastating middle-class families. You have this stunning reopening of the email investigation.
That's over.
And you also have the Clinton Global Foundation. The WikiLeaks stuff came out. Now, it's being reported that there are 5 separate FBI probes into the Clinton Global Foundation. Do you know anything about that?
Well, you remember when Comey was on Capitol Hill, he was asked directly by one of the members about that, whether he would say that there is a Clinton Foundation investigation, and he sort of didn't confirm, didn't deny. I mean, he wouldn't answer the question, probably wisely so, not wanting to tip their hat if they are indeed investigating. But now what we're hearing is that there are actual probes of some kind. I mean, we can't, say with certainty how far down the line they are, if they're initial inquiries, if there's anything criminal to it, but we know that they are looking into something.
Yeah, but Sean, here's the thing, and Bernard knows this, okay? He's not winning on this stuff. The only way Donald Trump would have or can win the election is when he sticks to the issues, because believe it or not, when he talks about immigration, his numbers go up. When he talks about healthcare, his numbers go up. Him sitting around waiting for some FBI probe to happen, for another email to drop, it has been proven over the last year that doesn't help him. So instead of concentrating this last week on what works for him, he's doing what Bernie is talking about, which is an easy way to lose.
Well, you think about that, because we have for months, I mean, for more than a year, the polling on Hillary Clinton has been that people, including this across the board, this isn't just Republicans, I mean, across the board, people see her as untrustworthy and dishonest. That is across the board, and yet they continue to vote for her and choose her.
Right.
So the people who support her, somehow in their minds, they've made peace with that.
We don't care.
They don't think that she's, it's not our issue. We think she's, we're still getting on that train because we think it's something that we can live with. We've calculated it in to our decision, and she continues to pull ahead and stay ahead, in the primaries, and now, for most part in the general election. So to me, that's already baked into the cake, these things about dishonesty or not telling the whole truth. So I don't know that new revelations about that specific angle for her are really going to matter.
Well, Trump can multitask. He can focus on the corruption and the open borders and the Obamacare implosion, right. So he may as well do so, and he does. Hey, listen, Shannon Bream, we are out of time.
Excellent job.
Great
fantastic
to chat with you, gentlemen. Come back to Florida. I'll see you there on Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Thank you. Shannon Bream from Fox News on the Bernie and Sid Show. Back after this.
77 WABC. Traffic and Transit.
In Melville, that overturned truck